Okay, everybody, we are back for another health talk with me, Ian from My Complete Health, and Dr. Ricky Miller.
Hello.
He's joining us again. So today we're going to be talking about a product of my own creation called the Master Metabolic Blend, and why we use it here at the clinic, why it was invented, and what the actual purpose is. And it's not misunderstood by a lot of people, but it's very unique in the market, and I don't think that people fully understand what it is that they have in the product and what they will get out of it. So, because lawyers must be appeased, so medical advice disclaimer. This presentation does not provide any medical advice. The information, including but not limited to text, graphics, images, or other material contained in this website and/or presentation, are for informational purposes only. No material is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any question you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, and never ever disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have read on the internet. So therefore, in a nutshell, you know nothing, they know everything. Just be sheep and get whatever nasty chemical they're peddling this week. Right?
That's right.
Right. Okay. So what we're going to cover in this presentation is what is the Master Metabolic designed for, what is an amino acid. There's a hint of what's going to be in there. What is the essential amino acid complex? We're going to go over a couple other the major components: inositol, which is B8, D-ribose, vitamin D, K1 and K2, niacin, B3, active B complex, creatine, L-carnitine, ionic trace mineral complexes. So what is the Master Metabolic Blend? Well, Master Metabolic was designed to supplement all aspects of metabolism and remove all rate-limiting steps for people so that optimal cellular energy could be produced and that all repair functions could operate at full speed.
So let's layman terms that, right?
That wasn't layman terms? Well, crap.
Not for some.
Okay.
Not for some.
Okay, go for it.
But if your body needs certain things to heal and you don't have those things, you will not heal, right? Which is a bigger problem than we even understand.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You got to think about it like this: is that we used to use bridge building analogies because everybody's been over a bridge. Everybody knows that you need concrete, rebar, steel, all these things. And so let's say that you've got all the steel in the world, but you don't actually need steel to repair the bridge. You need a lot of concrete. Well, it doesn't matter how much steel you have, there's no concrete, you're not going to get any repair done. Mm-hmm. And so the body is like that, and that's what I call a rate limiting reaction. Mm-hmm. So if you need if you have three components and you have unlimited amounts of those three components and you need all three to have the product on the other end after the reaction, you're going to be fine. But you absolutely need all three of them. So if you've got unlimited amounts of two, but you have none of the third one, your result will not be 2/3 of the product, your result will be 0.
Right.
And that is a classic example, although very simple, of a rate-limiting reaction, and that is what the body runs on. That's the body, biological chemistry in a nutshell. So I defined metabolism as the amount of cellular energy being created for work. So what work does cellular energy do? Well, repair, immune function being a large amount, like some estimates like up to 50% of the amount of energy you produce goes to your immune system. So if you're not producing energy, and we're not talking about six-pack abs here.
Right.
Let's just get that out of the way. Metabolism, I need good metabolism for six-pack abs. You really don't. That can be manipulated quite easily. But for immune function, you absolutely do need a good metabolism. Detox requires a lot of cellular energy because of the redox reactions that are in that. Cell division, creating new cells, immense amount of energy. And then maintaining aerobic processes, making it harder for cancer cells to form, because cancer cells are a mutation of anaerobic or sugar-only metabolism, and that is a result of cells not being able to have the chemistry to actually burn oxygen as fuel. So the key aspect of the Master Metabolic blend is the essential amino acid complex that is designed to maintain blood amino levels so you don't die. So what do I mean by that? Okay, because that's a bold statement.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, so anybody that knows me knows that one of my degrees is in history. So like there was this thing in the 80s called the war in Ireland, Northern Ireland. They Irish separatists. They wanted to be their own nation, and a lot of them, well, not a lot, quite a few of them went on hunger strikes to garner attention around the world, because this predated, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all these things. So it's like you had to like do something pretty drastic for that. And so what they did is that they allowed scientists, so they went on a hunger strike, they stopped eating, and they allowed scientists to monitor their blood. And now the whole thing is tragic, and I'm not commenting on the tragedy of the whole thing, but what I am commenting on is that one of the things they learned from that was that if your blood amino acid level drops, so amino acids being the building blocks of all proteins in the body, if that drops below a certain critical threshold, you can calculate death very accurately at the rate that it is dropping.
Mm-hmm.
So like whatever that line is, whatever that curve down is, you can say, okay, based on this, you're going to be dead in 2 weeks. And it's very accurate. And so that's why muscle wasting diseases, sarcopenia, elderly muscle wasting, organ failure, all that stuff, that's why it's a big, big deal. And it's not really a big deal when you're 20, 30, 35, except that's when it all starts, if you do nothing about it. So that begs the question, what's an amino acid?
What is an amino acid?
So we know it's important now, but what's going on here? Okay, so an amino acid is simply the building blocks of all proteins. There's 20 to 26 of them, depending on what you classify as an amino acid, and sometimes that goes in and out. And then there's around 10 to 14 essential amino acids. And some would say there's only like 10 or 11 essentials, but then there's some that are conditionally essential. And like, okay, here's the bottom line. The essential, non-essential is really a misnomer. You need them all. They're all essential. If you can't make one or more of them, you're toast. Okay, but if you have the essential aminos, technically speaking, you can manufacture some of the non-essentials yourself. Now, I've scanned well over 1,000 people in this office, and I have never seen one person that has on the get-go a perfect amino acid scan ever. And that is and they're not all Americans either. That's internationally as well. And the reason being is because we don't have a perfect amino acid ratio in our diet, and we have various things that block our uptake of certain amino acids on the fringe. But also, if you don't have the essentials, enough of them, even if you are getting these other amino acids in, your liver is going to cannibalize them to create the essentials so that your organs don't fail. So when you eat protein and you do not, so you don't, let's get this out of the way too.
Right.
When you eat a steak, you're not absorbing a steak.
No.
You're absorbing fat, amino acids from the protein, like various vitamins, minerals, the whole thing, but you're not getting a whole protein, a whole piece of that meat to go through. Right. If something like that happens, you have what's known as leaky gut, and that is a very dangerous and serious problem to have. And that's also one of the problems that we deal with a lot here, and that's also one of the reasons why you're not digesting your protein very well. All right? So Oh, look at that. Fundamentally a problem with the leaky gut. So proteins are digested or broken down into amino acids, and those amino acids are absorbed into the body, and they make everything from certain hormones to muscles, the skins, the bones. Essentially everything that is structural has an amino acid component in it. So in virtually every part of the body uses some form of amino acids, either in chemical function or structure. The modern problem is that people can't. Notice that I used can't, not don't.
Not don't.
Don't has a connotation that maybe that's something that they're doing. This is a modern toxicity problem, and it has to do with what we're putting in our bodies and blockages, and we have to get around that, and we'll see how to do that. But they can't digest protein well due to toxicity and too many antacids. And I'm not just talking about Tums. I'm talking about people that drink like a soda, diet or otherwise, with their meal, and you have this carbonation that will neutralize stomach acid. You've got certain meal pairings, like, so it's like a lot of people, they eat carbs and proteins together. If you are digestive compromising, a sandwich, carbs and protein, that's not great for you,
right?
Because those require two different types of enzymes and acids and everything to get going. So it goes into food pairing, and we're not talking about that in this time, but it is an issue with the modern diet. And so every time you have an upset stomach and you take an antacid, you destroy the ability for the digestive system to break down food little by little. Now, is it very little? Yeah, it is. So if you have heartburn really bad, the question should be then is like, what did you eat for that? And don't eat that again. Because it's not the heart, like getting rid of the heartburn isn't the issue. The issue is that what did you react to get that?
Right.
So, but let's say you take some Tums or an antacid for that. It's like, yeah, you're going to get just a little bit reduction in your ability to digest protein. And you do that starting at the age of 15 for some of these people. Or I've actually had people tell me, I've been to other conferences, and they were talking about doctors that prescribe Prilosec to toddlers with colic. No, not toddlers, newborns. I'm sorry. Wow. I'm sorry. I misspoke.
Yeah,
it's even worse.
Newborns.
It's even worse than I said. Newborns. So, by the time you're in your early 40s, you're going to have a severe decline in the ability to digest protein, and if you can't digest it, you're not absorbing it, and this leads to what we're finding is the putrefied gut. Okay,
yes. Because very painful.
Right, and so a lot of people, it's like, and we see that all the time in America. It's lower abdomen distension. It looks like their stomach is just sliding off the bottom of them, and it's very hard. It's not fat. A lot of people say, oh, I'm just fat. You're not fat. If you're just fat, it's cosmetic. You'd be fine. We're talking about bloating and distension and real organ failure here.
Gas, big pressure in the belly.
Yep.
A lot of patients have this. Some, like you said, have been on PPI for 40 years.
Yeah.
They couldn't digest a cracker.
No, and therein lies the problem. And then they wonder why they're having so many issues. And it's like, well, there's no building blocks going in.
Right.
And I always tell people, it's like, everybody... Once it's like, there's like, why is my body breaking down? And they're very upset with their body and everything. And I'm just like, I am not. I marvel every day at the human body's ability to operate on virtually nothing. Zero input. And it does zero input for 20 or 30 or 40 years. Try running your car like that.
Right.
It's not going to work. So therein lies, so most people at this point would say, well, I don't do well on protein, so therefore I must not need that much protein. And that is absolutely the wrong answer. The protein is still the answer, and it is the answer for a lot of health questions, but in order to jumpstart the protein process, we're going to have to bypass digestion to create a new baseline. So that brings us to the essential amino acid complex. And so Dr. Robert Wolfe, PhD, Guide to Amino Acids and Protein Nutrition. Fabulous book. Don't read it. If you're not a biology student, don't read it. It's not worth it. The gist is, because it's not even in chapters. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's
That's
just
kinda
it's just a collection of his notes that are vaguely a book. Okay. So it doesn't read very well.
Uh-huh.
And then the glossary is like kind of a randomized terms of stuff that he thought was important, but I love it anyway. It's fantastic. But I used that as the basis to create the essential amino acid complex. And essentially what he did over the course of about 35 years working with amino acids and proteins and found that your first, and this was my first go-to, let's supplement them all at the same time. We got to get them all in there, because if we have the ability to just pick and choose amino acid powders, we should have to, wouldn't that be logical? Just get them all in.
Right. Get 'em all.
No, there's actually a cascade and a certain ratio that you have to hit in order to jumpstart a number of anabolic processes in the body, so that you can start repair and absorption processes. Because if you try to deliver all the amino acids at the same time, like kind of evenly, it doesn't work.
Doesn't show up right.
It doesn't show up right, and the efficiency, believe it or not, goes way, way, way down. So it's actually more efficient to just supplement in one particular time the essential amino acids in a proper ratio. And of course, I'm not going to tell you the ratio because that's a secret sauce, but I can tell you that I actually had to make my own amino acid complex. We actually have it made by our suppliers overseas, because they always get histidine wrong. Histidine is so right now you can you can get glycine for fairly cheaply. We won't go into that because it's a fluctuating market. But if you want to look up how much glycine is, then you look up histidine. It's about 5 times more expensive for the same weight. Well, a lot of manufacturers, if you look at their proprietary blend, they're always going to have histidine at the last spot or the second to last spot. And if histidine is there, it's out of ratio with everything else.
Right.
And they've also done that with a couple other ones, and you're not going to get that anabolic jumpstart. And that's a hard pill to swallow, so to speak, because if you actually are going to do it right, then that means that your amino acid complex is going to be expensive.
Right.
And that means your profit margin is not going to be as much.
Right.
But it's going to be effective. So the question there is that do you want an effective product or do you want high profit ratios?
It's a good question.
It's a good question. I chose an effective product because I'm going for outcome, not profit. And there's so many people that need it out there. It's like the motivation shouldn't be profit anyway, because like if you actually make something that works, it's not going to be an issue. So so if you can't, so the problem with increasing diet, so the knee jerk would be, okay, so if we're not going to supplement all amino acids, well then we have to increase total dietary protein, carnivore diet, right? Okay. And I'm not knocking carnivore, but some people try it and they get really sick. My sister not being one of them. My sister is actually on carnivore and she feels fantastic, but then I explained to her, and that's because like she, when I scanned her, like she has she just doesn't digest raw vegetables well right now, and there's some other things involved in that. That's outside the scope of the presentation, but a lot of people don't do well on it. And why is that? And it's because they've either one, not eaten a whole lot of protein their entire lives, so they don't have that hydrochloric acid and enzyme built up to a certain point that they can handle it, or two, they have had various gut reactions and they've been erroneously prescribed all of these antacids,
right.
And now they physically can't do it.
You can't make acid.
Yeah, you can't make acid because you need protein to make acid, and various enzymes that go into breaking down protein. So you need protein to digest protein. So if you don't have protein, okay, now we have a problem. Okay, so we're going to have to bypass the digestion of the protein, and that is going to be with the essential amino acid complex, and it's going to hit all of these anabolic check boxes, well, so to speak, that the body's looking for, and that is going to jumpstart repair processes, set hormones going, set insulin going, the whole thing in a very proper and correct way. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is that they found throughout the book, so it's like, so if you, for every 10 grams, and I'm pointing to the screen like anybody can see it on the video, So
Right.
like just
Imagine it.
yeah, imagine me doing 10 grams of essential amino acid complex is equivalent to 50 grams of whole protein. Okay, and so you got to say it's like when you're like a bodybuilder or you're a teenager and you're trying to hit your macros and all that stuff like they all do. And you say, man, I ate 200 grams of protein. I am going to be looking like Arnold in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Because that's what the math says. And it's like, nope. You're really out of that 200. You're about, we can see here, you're about 20% efficient.
Right.
Then you're really only going to be getting about 40 grams of total digested protein for work and or repair. The rest is...
That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
The other 160 is rotting in your gut.
Right.
And you have the nasty protein farts that all the teenagers have.
That's true. Yes. Yes. And that is why, so like anybody out there, anybody that idolizes like the Mr. Olympia and everything else, it's like one of the major problems they had was the bubble gut. You know,
yes,
and and you go to the gym and everything, and these guys that are obviously strong, they're obviously in shape, but they've got like chiseled arms and back and everything, but then it looks like they're 9 months pregnant.
Right.
And that is it, but 9 months pregnant with turtle shell on it. They've got a six-pack on top of that. So what's happening is that's the protein putrefaction, and they're actually hurting themselves majorly, and they're not digesting it. They're actually wasting a lot of money chasing that protein. So what
discomfort?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. So what you can think about is that every serving of the Master Metabolic has 10 grams of the essential amino acid complex, which is the equivalent of perfectly digesting a super lean 8 ounces of steak. Perfectly. With no digestive interference, no nothing. It perfectly goes in and your body knows exactly what to do with it. So that is so that was the essential amino acid complex. We increase protein digestion by bypassing protein and going to directly digested protein in that complex, and then we will increase protein synthesis, and your ability to actually digest and make stomach acid will increase after that, and that's why it settles out the digestive system. Then also another thing too is when we talk about depression, so we have various other amino acids for serotonin and dopamine. Because your essentials are now baselined, anything that you take in dietary protein wise will then not be cannibalized. It will actually be able to go to neurotransmitter production. We do very well with the amino acid therapy for anxiety and depression because of this, and some other things that we'll talk about. Oh, look, B8, inositol. It's like I planned this. It didn't. I was just walked into that.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I know, but we'll go with it. I planned it, yes. So B8 is not it's not the sexy like B12. Oh, just come in for a B12 shot. It's not folate. You know, it's all that stuff, and we'll talk about all that. But it's very underutilized, and it's actually underdosed a lot. We don't actually have the maximal dose that we can have in this because there's only so much room in the scoop. But inositol has many uses, but what we put it in here for, at the dose that we have, it's designed to help with reducing anxiety because it affects the processes that make neurotransmitters. So anxiety disorders, panic disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders, post-traumatic stress, all of those can be affected very positively by higher dose niacin, or B8, inositol, not niacin. Niacin comes up next. So it aids in blood sugar control, it improves insulin response, so diabetics, athletes, like if you have like a job where you need a lot of endurance, inositol should be thought of for that, because anytime you're controlling insulin, you're controlling blood sugar and you're controlling endurance at that point. Women with fertility issues, PCOS, polycystic ovary disease, reduces the symptoms of depression, and that has actually more to do with its again, metabolic processes. I mean, it's in the Master Metabolic, it's for metabolism,
right.
So it increases a lot of those things that are producing neurotransmitters. And even at high doses of 12 to 18 grams, there's no major side effects outside of mild things, which is like stomach upset. So it's not like some of these more harsh herbs that you would need to it's like, well, you can take up to a certain amount, but you don't really want to take any more than that because they can have other side effects or become not as potent or something like that. No, inositol's not like that. The worst thing it can do is just give you an upset stomach and diarrhea. So it's pretty good. Being a person that has suffered and worked with personal anxiety and depression, I can tell you that it does work, and you don't necessarily need a ton. They used upwards of like 10 to 20 grams to treat certain depressive disorders, but they were only doing it for shorter periods of time. So if you were actually doing something for a long term, you could actually build up the rates of neurotransmitters just by being consistent with it. And just like with everything else that you're going to find in our series, is consistency is key. You can't go gung-ho on everything for 4 days, 4 days a month, and then think that you're good for like 2 more weeks. It doesn't work that way. D-ribose. Again, D-ribose, it's actually a sugar. And not a lot of people understand what it is, but deoxyribonucleic acid, it's part of your DNA. Yeah, part of your DNA. But it makes up part of the cell's energy source, which is ATP. It actually helps make ATP, which is the
gasoline.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know. I mean, it is the energy molecule. It is like
makes everything happen.
It just makes everything happen. I was about to make some nuclear fusion remark, but that's not gonna go well. No one's gonna get that. But it's more, the gist is that it is more atomic than it is chemical. In that, like gasoline is a physical process, this is more of an atomic process. That's what I'm trying to get across. But it is energy. So when we talk about metabolism, we're talking about making cellular energy. We're talking about ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. And it's in those phosphate bonds when they break and then are redox back to each other that's where you make and gain electricity or energy. Sometimes electricity, but most of the time it's energy. It helps in the recovery of the energy stores of the cell because of everything we just said, restores ATP levels in the muscle after heavy exertion, improves heart function in people with heart disease, helps improve pain for certain disorders, and improves muscle function overall. So if you improve all of those things, your metabolism will go up, your recovery rate will go up. Like if everybody is concerned about their heart. Some people are overly concerned about it. There's a lot of marketing that goes into that. And some people are legitimately concerned about it because of damage that's happened. D-ribose can help with both of those. Anything you want to add to that?
Something interesting about ATP is we think of ATP as what makes things happen, right? So if we want to contract our muscle, we need ATP. Right? But it also takes energy to relax our muscle.
That is true, yeah.
It is in every process all throughout the body, tensing, relaxing, and so obviously anything that increases ATP production is a win.
Right. Yeah, actually, that's an extremely good point, and not something that I even thought of, is that if you can't produce energy at all levels, then that means you physically cannot relax.
Right. How many people are walking around zombified, whooped?
Right.
Because they just can't make energy.
Right. And they can't relax in order to do any repairs because they can't sleep. They're always twitchy and tense. I mean, restless leg syndrome.
Oh, yes. All the time. In young people.
Yeah. And one of my favorite comedians, he was the guy that did Cash Cab. He has this whole bit on restless leg, and he goes to the doctor, and the doctor is like, no, it's when they stop moving. That's the problem. If they're moving, then that's good. Anyway. So vitamin D. Oh my gosh. Vitamin D is both the scariest thing in the world and the most helpful thing in the world. Don't take too much vitamin D. You gotta hit that sweet spot because vitamin D, that'll do nothing apparently. It actually does. You can't overdose on vitamin D, and that is controversial, but they actually there was a toxicity study on vitamin D because it was in the mid 50s, I believe that it was, and one of the researchers in that study took 1 million IUs of vitamin D a day for a month. even now, they didn't note at the time whether it was D2 or D3, and then there's going to be a lot of people out there where it's like, oh, D2 isn't D3, and it's like, yeah, but if you shove enough of it in, it'll convert. We just don't convert it as well as rats do. But even if you factor in the potency of the D2 to D3 conversion in the human, 1 million IUs a month is still 200,000 IUs a day for a month, and there was no adverse effects.
Wow.
There's another study from a group in Seattle, now very small, it was only 4 or 5 people, but they did 100,000 IUs, some of them for over a year of D3, no adverse effects. And what we find is that vitamin D toxicity is K1 and K2 deficiency, because D activates K1 and K2. So if you want to supplement that, you need to supplement K1 and K2. And then what we've also found is that the body kind of baselines itself, like it'll use whatever's there, and then so it's like the sweet spot. The reason they say the sweet spot is like 70s, 65 to 75 nanograms a deciliter, or it doesn't matter what the measurement is. When you look at the lab, it's going to be 65 to 75. I just know what the measurement is. The reason they want that is because if you're not supplementing these other ones, you're not going to get these high dose side effects if it's that low. But technically speaking, that's still low, because the body will maximally top out about 150 nanograms a deciliter, and it'll just stay there. It won't actually, it won't allow any more vitamin D into the bloodstream once it hits that, and that's pretty consistent across the board. Now, you might have severe vitamin C toxicity side effects at that level if you are not supplementing these reciprocal vitamins. So it's not a free lunch. You got to know what you're doing with this, and that's why I tell everybody, it's like there's certain things that we just do not supplement here at My Complete Health that's not inside a complex. Very rarely do we supplement anything outside of a complex, because it turns out you need all this stuff to go together.
Right.
So what does vitamin D do? It helps fight disease, reduces risk of MS, heart disease, flu. Yes, all flus, including COVID-19. And anybody that doesn't know by this point that vitamin D helps with COVID-19,
right,
honestly, where have you been?
Where have you been?
Yeah. But so if you didn't, we're not making fun of you, but we're literally asking, where have you been? We want to be there, because we don't want to deal with this stuff anymore either.
I would like to be there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we won't get into that aspect, but it does boost the immune system that fights the coronavirus in the way that the spikes attach to the cells very effectively. It reduces depression, it helps in weight loss, it strengthens bones, and it fights inflammation. And you want to know what the craziest part about vitamin D is? It's not a vitamin. It's a hormone.
It's a hormone, that's right.
And that's why it can do some of these crazy things, and the reason that they put it in as a vitamin is because vitamin as the original category they were trying to figure out what was essential and what was not essential. And vitamin D is absolutely essential. So we have the average serving, and of course, if those that don't know, Master Metabolic is a powder. Because the volume that you need is just surpasses what you can fit into a pill. But the average, it has about 10,000 IUs per serving, and that sounds like a lot, except that if you're down in Florida and you're on the beach, you're making 20 to 35,000 IUs a day. So it's only about a third of what your body can make maximally.
Right.
So it's not really that much. So then that brings us to K1 and K2. And I would honestly buy dinner for anybody that off the cuff could tell me what K1 and K2 do. No one knows. They know that they need them. Okay. Now, honestly, if you're one of my clients and you come in tomorrow and you tell me what K1 and K2 does,
right.
That doesn't count because I'm going to tell you right here.
Right.
All right.
I know you can't eat spinach and be on thinners. That's pretty much the extent.
Right. That's dubious in and of itself too, but whatever. Remember, I'm not your doctor. I'm not even a doctor. So K1 helps. It's healthy blood clotting. So if you bruise easily, you get nosebleeds, you have bleeding gums. If you're a woman and you have heavy menstrual bleeding, all of those are K1 deficiencies. Okay. Boost brain health because it helps with fat metabolisms. So it's like you can metabolize fats as energy better for the brain. The brain is fat, runs on fat, requires fat. especially DHA, which is part of the omega-3 fats. So if you are a student out there of any age and you want to study harder and better and get better grades, high-dose fish oil with DHA fractionation with iodine. Those two will get it done. Protects heart, reduces calcified fat from which would be atherosclerosis. Yes, yeah, atherosclerosis. So reduces calcified fat. Linked to lower rates of cancer. Obviously, they can't definitively say that because there's too much money involved in that. Bone health, so it increases bone health because of the various metabolism factors, and then dental health for the same reason as bone health. Okay, K2, which is it should be, it's in the K family, but they're very different molecules. Like they're not similar. So naming conventions aside, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but whatever. Again, improves bone health, reduces risk of osteoporosis, reduces fracture risks. So if you are concerned about fracture, which a lot of my postmenopausal women clients are, K2 should be right up there. Activates calcium binding proteins. So if we're trying to increase bone mineral density scores, you're not going to do that with calcium. You're just not going to do it with calcium. You need high dose magnesium, the essential amino acid complex, to be able to free up amino acids for collagen production, and then vitamin C and a couple of these other ones, especially K2, which is what we're talking about. Then you can get it done. Improves dental health for the same reason. Fights cancer, prevents varicose veins. So it's much easier to prevent the varicose than it is to reverse them.
That's
So just people, both men and women, keep that in mind. Improves symptoms of PCOS. Oh, I skipped one. It reduces skin wrinkles. So somebody that might
skip that one.
Yeah, somebody that might be important too. All right. Reduces skin wrinkles. Improves symptoms of PCOS or polycystic ovary disease, which unfortunately is just extremely popular because it's a deficiency disorder, and they're just I'm not going to get into that. We should do one on that, but it's beyond the scope, but it's all man-made. And then it enhances testosterone levels in men, balances a lot of hormones in women too, but especially enhances testosterone levels, and then prevents kidney stones because it works on the calcium channel. It makes the calcium go where it should. So if calcium isn't floating around in your blood, then it's not going to crystallize in your kidneys.
Right.
So there you go. K1 and K2. Here's the big one, niacin. I love niacin, but I hate niacin all at the same time, because niacin has this little interesting side effect where it increases peripheral nitric oxide production. So what does that mean?
Right.
It means that if you are so low in niacin, like the average American is, virtually zero, and you take niacin at any amount, you are going to get lit on fire from head to toe potentially. And I can't tell you how many calls and texts and emails I have gotten where I have talked people off the ledge and I say, no, the little warning on the bag that says niacin flush, you should really look it up before you actually take this. Apparently no one reads anything. No one reads anything. I could write anything I want on this bag and no one's going to read it, so what does it matter? But the point is that in some people that are severely low, they're going to get a major flushing event. And all it is that it's just going to push blood.
What is a flushing event? Yeah,
So what happens is that the niacin is actually working to activate the immune cells of the skin called Langerhans cells. Mm-hmm. The Langerhans do a bunch of chemistry, but then they kick off nitric oxide as the byproduct of their chemistry, which is actually what niacin is doing. The nitric oxide has nothing to do with niacin. It has everything to do with the built-up enzyme that is in the Langerhans cells. But that nitric oxide is what makes the blood vessels dilate to make them bigger, and so now all of the capillary beds in your skin are going to get super huge super fast, and then all of the blood is going to rush to there, and that's what makes it red and tingly and hot and all that stuff.
So your face gets red, your body gets red, kind of looks like you're a lobster.
Yeah. A lot of people misinterpret it as them having an allergic reaction.
Right, it could feel like that.
Could feel if you'd feel like that, but it's like, how do you know if you're having an allergic reaction or not? Well, can you still breathe?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think
you're
it
not.
feels great.
It does. It actually does feel great, unless you're like me and you wanted to figure out what an actual quote unquote high dose would feel like. And so I have 300 milligrams in each bag. I took 10,000 because I'm me. People that know me know that this actually makes sense.
Right.
So what happened was that I had a severe reaction, and I was at home, and I don't remember this, but apparently I made a pizza, I ate it, and then I woke up like 4 hours later. And that is because all the blood left my brain and it was in my skin.
You were glowing. You
Oh
just
yeah,
didn't know
absolutely. It. No, and but it didn't hurt. I mean, it hurt physically because you're
stretching out
those capillary beds. But when I was on the other side, when I was done with it, after I was done hallucinating, I felt really great.
Yeah.
Okay. And after that, like every single time I had niacin, it was diminished after that. So it's like you could get it all knocked out of the way if you wanted to, because when you are fully saturated with niacin and you don't have extra enzyme left over, you're not going to flush anymore.
Right.
And it has nothing. People are like, oh, they always ask me. It's like, did you not mix it right? Because I didn't feel any niacin flush, and I'm like, no, that's the whole point.
Right.
It's like you don't have to feel it forever.
I do miss it.
It's nice.
I'll give them that. It's kind of fun.
You just take more.
Right.
To a certain point. At some point, it's like I have to take 2,000 or 3,000 milligrams to actually get a flushing now. Yeah. But yeah, that's the funny part. So no, you're not having an allergic reaction. You are activating your immune cells. In fact, it's called a niacin detox or a niacin flush for a reason, because it's flushing crap out of your peripheral artery bed or capillary beds that's been there for God knows how long anyway.
Right.
And so you're actually increasing dramatically your immune system doing that. So just keep that in mind. But the more notables for niacin is that it improves cholesterol, LDL and HDL, and reduces oxidative stress, especially in the heart, decreases risk of diabetes, increases cognitive function, improves skin health. Again, the flushing just isn't a neat trick. Improves arthritic symptoms, again, because of the blood flow. We are increasing blood flow. We can move nutrients in. We can move waste out. And we can also drain, too, at that point. Pressure.
Right.
So, treats pellagra, which is, it's in that rickets, degenerative disease category. And and people are like, what does pellagra have to do for us? Isn't that only in Africa? No. Actually, symptoms of pellagra are all around us. It's just that we have just enough niacin fortified in super shitball cereals that we don't have full on distended. I'm an African orphan distended belly,
abdomen,
right? And there's no Sarah McLachlan song for us,
right?
All right. I'm leaving that in there.
Right, that's good.
And then it improves circulation, obviously, because of everything that we just talked about. So niacin, you need it. There's no getting around it. If you don't want it, then don't take it. B complex. Everybody knows that they need the B complex. I remember I was watching MTV and somebody was like, "This has B complex in it." What does that mean? I was like, well, that's a great question. At least they were honest. So the B complex, as we know it now, or is what you're going to find on a lot of supplements, is going to be B1, which is thiamine, B2, which is riboflavin, B3, which is niacin, B5, which is pantothenic acid, B7, which is biotin, B9, which is folate, not folic acid. Folic acid is not a B vitamin, it's road tar. And then B12, which is cobalamin. There are various forms of cobalamin. We'll talk about that a little later. Okay, so what does the whole complex do? Well, it regulates blood sugar. It is necessary for the breakdown of carbohydrates, reduces risk of cardiovascular disease. Low level of B6 and B12 result in increased homocysteine, which is the overall inflammatory markers of the whole body. So if you have high homocysteine, if your homocysteine is over 1, so those of you out there that have blood work and it's relatively recent, if you go check that and your homocysteine is over 1, you have an inflammatory problem. any physician out there I've had some physicians that say that, or told my clients that, yeah, anything under 9 and you're okay. Anything basically, no, it's like I can't roll my eyes hard enough at that.
Right.
But anything over 1, you are developing a serious inflammatory process. Anything over 3, you have full-on total body inflammation. You are going to break something soon.
Probably your arteries.
Probably your arteries. So get that homocysteine down, B6 and B12. Improves cognitive function. They are antioxidants in and of themselves. Improves sex hormone production of sex hormones. Essential for fetal development. Folic acid is not a B vitamin. If your prenatals do not have folate and they don't have methylfolate, then they are trash. Throw them out. Okay. What happens is that, and this is endlessly debatable and it's outside the scope, but most people do not metabolize folic acid appropriately, even though that it does satisfy the chemical test for B9. We won't get into it other than that. Okay. If it did work and all these mothers are getting massive dose of folic acid, why do we have so many neural defects in all these children?
Right. People aren't labs.
No.
If it works in a lab, it's not the same.
No. Could be the same, but sometimes, right. But most of the time it's not. They improve sleep quality, promotes gene regulation. Folate, B9 is for when your cells divide. Helps with migraines, which we could do a whole thing on migraines. Most people think that they have migraines and they really don't. They have chemical poisoning. And then regulates cell ATP production, which is the energy of the cells, and that's why it's in the master metabolic. All right, there's a whole theme on this, right? But yeah, so you need them all, and you need them all at relatively high doses, which we happen to have them in here. Because so let's go back to dosing for a second.
Yes.
We haven't really talked about that a whole lot in any of the videos we've done so far. Do you know where the RDA standard came from, the recommended daily allowance?
No, I do not.
Most people don't. So there's this little thing called World War I, 1914 to 1918. Okay, and what happened was that the U.S. Army sent a bunch of guys over there late in the war, and not a lot or not as many as they wanted, made it to the actual front line so that they could take a bullet. They actually got sick and or were too sick to fight or died before they got there. And this was a major problem in the mechanized warfare that started with World War I.
Yeah.
So this was a major problem. So the Army Corps, which was set up as a standing army after World War I, was tasked with nutritional requirements for soldiers to get them to
be strong enough to get to the front line.
So that they could
so
fight.
That you could, yeah.
Now that has nothing to do with you don't want to make this perfect Adonis specimen of nutrition and fortification just to have them take a bullet.
Right. They're not making Captain Americas.
No. We're not going to get into that. But they tried. Oh my God, did they try? In my opinion, they succeeded. This is a little digression. They actually were successful in creating sailors that could actually see in the infrared spectrum by supplementing different forms of vitamin A. Before the advent of night vision, it was a successful experiment. So Captain America is floating out there somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. So again, people, know your history. The world is better with history. Anyway, moving on. So
RDAs are designed to get you to the front line.
Get you to the fight, but they have nothing to do. They're absolutely meaningless for health and therapeutic dosing of anything. And that's why, like, people look at me like insane. Like, I'll pull my thing out here. It's like you have B12. I've got 500 micrograms, which is 8,000%. I've got pantothenic acid, which is 5,000%. D20, 2,500% D3. It's like they're all in the 1,000% range. And the only reason I have to label them like that is because I'm required to label them by law based on the RDA percentage.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with therapy. It has nothing to do with health.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very good point.
Thank you. All right. So moving on. Creatine. Thoughts on creatine?
Well, if you ever do bodybuilding, that's your magic powder.
Yeah, that's right. I always say that creatine is what teenagers use because they can't afford or they can't find real steroids.
Yeah, that's very accurate.
It's actually and that's actually sad because most people, it's like, well, I don't want to be on creatine. I'm not an athlete. Creatine is, so it's like, this is why I tell people, it's like, when they say, what protein powder do you like, and I say steak, because and this is the whole reason why we're designing this product the way that it is, because I'm trying to get it to the point where you can actually eat real food again.
Yeah.
Because a steak is one of the best supplements, i.e. food, that you can eat, because it's got basically everything in it, including a lot of creatine.
Right.
Creatine is a naturally occurring substance. Now, we've figured out how to separate it just like everything else and give it in a very metered dose, but it has a lot of extremely good functions, which is what we're going to go over.
Yes.
So, enhances recovery, enhances high intensity work and or working out and or athletics, which is why everybody uses it as like that, improves anaerobic activity or anaerobic capacity, enhances methylation. Without the methylation process, the anabolic processes in the whole body would be disrupted. This is a very important thing. That's why when people have a disruption in the methylation gene like MTHFR,
right,
you have to do things to work around that, and you have to be aware of that. Again, outside the scope of the video, but it does enhance methylation in everybody that takes it. It boosts brain function, it improves bone healing, improves strength and power, improves glucose tolerance, which is, you hear that, type 2 diabetics? Glucose tolerance. Reduces age-related muscle loss, sarcopenia, boosts testosterone levels, helps cells produce more energy, beneficial for Parkinson's because it can help increase the dopamine on the dopamine pathway, and that's why one of the major reasons why we include it at the rate that we do. Now, a lot of people are going to say it's like, oh, you only have 1,500 milligrams in there. Yeah, if you're a bodybuilder and you're an athlete, you need way more than that. Right. But this is to help with the average person so that they can get their cellular metabolism up. That is more than enough to get a lot of these, everything that we're talking about, a lot of these functions going.
Right, because we're looking for the cascade, the ratios, and all those things.
That is correct. So yeah, it's not enough if you're 18, you're hitting the gym 6 days a week, buy extra creatine.
Yeah, get extra.
Yeah, that's it. That's all there is to it. But at least now when you take the extra stuff, you'll actually be able to use it instead of it just having you bloat out.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Prevents various neurological diseases, and that again helps with the serotonin and dopamine pathway, which are neurotransmitters, which are neurological diseases, or can be associated with that. Reduces fatigue because it increases cellular energy production and helps avoid depression. Again, going back to serotonin and dopamine production. So creatine, not just for high school athletes.
Right.
Yeah. L-carnitine, yeah, again, another one. Major roles in metabolism and energy production, increases endurance, enhances weight loss, prevents muscle damage, boosts brain function, regulates blood sugar, and increases heart health. Now, L-carnitine, this is one of those. Now, I include L-carnitine because it is very hard in America to actually get L-carnitine at the rate that we need it, because we don't eat the more horse-like animals. Okay, we have beef. Beef has a very good amino acid profile for humans, but it is not as high as we require in L-carnitine. Water buffalo would actually be the best, as far as my research shows, the best amino acid ratio for a lean red meat that humans should eat. We don't have that.
We don't have that yet.
No, the best we have is bison, and that's why, like, I forget his name, but he does the vertical diet.
Can't remember.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm not going to amend this either for that. I'm far too lazy. But look up the vertical diet. But he advocates eating bison because, again, as a red meat, it has a better amino acid profile for bodybuilders, athletes, and just general health. Bison is more popular, but it is still relatively hard to find. But again, L-carnitine is considered a semi-essential amino acid, and that's why we include it, because anything that's semi is probably essential in our current day. This is the one that really I didn't struggle with this, but it goes against a lot of conventionality. Ionic mineral complex. It sounds super gimmicky because it's like why do we need 72 macro and trace minerals? Why like isn't trace minerals, isn't that just salt and electrolytes and electrolytes? It has what plants crave.
Right.
Oh, classic. What we found, and we talked about this too. It's like you can have like a couple of your friends that did the magnesium supplements.
Yeah.
And they had like 10 different forms of magnesium. They all are studied to do different things.
Sure.
Right? Well, clinically, we found after scanning people that even if we gave 10, 20 grams of magnesium, like magnesium tartrate, magnesium taurate, which is supposed to be highly absorbable, we didn't move the needle at all. It wasn't going in. People got some relief, like especially cramping at night and everything like that. And I got relief too, because I had what could be classified at the time as a restless leg. I would get very severe leg cramps at night. But then personally I said, you know what, I want to see this magnesium get balanced out on the scans. And at one point I was taking 1,000 milligram pills. I was taking 20 grams of magnesium a day, and I didn't see a difference. I didn't feel a difference at all either. And it wasn't until I started at that point I was like, all right, we gotta figure out what's going on. I gotta find a different thing. So I started trying a bunch of different mineral complexes, and we found the ionic mineral complex. It is a product of Utah, the ancient seabeds there.
Nice.
It is the only raw material nutritional product that is produced in America. So everybody that says I don't want any of this Chinese or overseas crap, well, tough. That's where it all is. It gets made in China and it gets made in India. Like your hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and everything else that you want, where you think that's coming from? India. All right. So you just got now. Is it right? No. Is it necessarily bad? Well, yeah. It depends where you get it from. You have to have trusted sources. I work with a bunch of trusted sources. It helps to have relatives over there that can actually talk there and say, hey, yeah, this place is real and it's nice. So there you go. So in terms of the ionic mineral complex, once I started thinking about it, it actually makes perfect sense, because the magnesium taurate is an amino bonded mineral, which means that when it gets absorbed, it has to go to the liver. The liver has to cleave off the amino acid, and then the mineral can do its job, and the amino acid can do its job. But what if the liver is overloaded? What if it doesn't have enough capacity to actually do that at the rate that you need it? That's a lot of people's livers. Yeah. Okay? A lot of people are very liver compromised, and we're not talking about cirrhosis. We're just talking about generalized modern toxicity. That will lead into cirrhosis. But what we found is that, so then it's like, okay, well, if you can have the minerals not in crystalline minerals or amino bonded minerals, but, and when I mean crystalline, I essentially am talking about rocks. Right. Yeah. So like you can't absorb those. Plants can, because they absorb a certain, it's fulvic acid, humic acid, and then it gets complicated. It involves some physics that shouldn't actually take place, but it does. So that would be interesting. That's another talk. We'll table that one. But with the 72 macro and trace minerals that are in salt form, you put them in the water, they dissociate, they become elemental, you drink it down, and they go straight in and they do the work. And you can take orders of magnitude less and get the same job done. I take, depending on stress levels and depending on how many clients I see that, how many like people that have spike protein sheddings or like how many I'm around with that, because I'm not reacting the best to that. And it makes me burn through a lot of minerals. I'll take about a teaspoon a day of powdered ionic minerals, which essentially it's like the liquid trace minerals that you see on Amazon and everything.
The bottle.
It's essentially the entire bottle every night. But that's why we put it in as a powder, because again, it's just about efficacy. It's not about the profit margin.
Right.
So ionic means salt forms. It can dissolve in water into elemental minerals at the atomic level, can be absorbed directly into the body, can take a far lower volume and get the same benefit as higher doses of crystalline minerals. And then again, one serving of the Master Metabolic is almost as much as a whole bottle of some of the liquid style stuff that I calculated from like Amazon or something. One serving, because it's powder. It's a lot.
It's potent.
Yeah, it's potent. I don't even know if, well, anyway, so, all right, so we talked this up, so let's talk about the nitty gritty here, because everybody knows that health ain't cheap.
That's right.
And you have modern farming, modern industry, modern agriculture, the FDA, the NIH, everybody to blame for this, because it's like they're all trying to kill us. Too bad it's really hard to kill people. Well, not too bad. Good thing it is. Okay, so in all jest, so like the reason why I made this product is because I am trying desperately to make health accessible to people at therapeutic levels, and you shouldn't necessarily need to be rich, like extremely rich, in order to get access to health. Because what I keep telling everybody is that when people come into my clinic, it is my goal to see them for a short period of time and then hopefully never again, because I don't have to. Now, if they want to come back from that and do checkups and everything, that's fine. But there are so very many people out there that need help that if I was trying to figure out how I was going to rotate everybody through and put a dollar sign on their head and everything, it's not necessary, because there's so many people out there. I just we need to be effective. We need to get people healthy. We need to get them out the door, and we need them to tell other people so that they know where to go for health. That's the bottom line. So, and when we look at this, and you're going to see why we did this the certain way. So, if you were to get the essential amino acid complex, and you can get essential amino acid complexes,
right? Of course,
absolutely. Now you got to look at, if you're going to do that on your own, I'm not sure why after this you would want to do that, but if you're going to do it, you need to look at where histidine is, and if histidine is in the wrong spot, it's not going to work. It's going to be highly inefficient. And if you don't believe me, I'll hand you the book and you can read through that. It's about 400 pages. Have fun. But so what we're doing for the costs is that this isn't a particular bottle. It's not this, but we took highly reputable sources and we equivalenced the dosing that is in the Master Metabolic. So you would have to get $195 worth of somebody else's amino acid complex. You would have to get roughly $100 worth of B8. You would have to get about $150 of ribose, about $100-ish of DK1, K2, because they do sell those in pretty decent complexes. But you just have to take multiple doses of those, a lot. Niacin, super cheap. This is the only cheap one on there. $13, not a big deal, but it still adds up. B complex, again, you don't need everybody puts so much emphasis on Bs, and you do need them, but they're not the whole story, and they're not super expensive. So if you're spending a lot of money on Bs, you really need to watch out for that. But it's about 25. Creatine, because this isn't bodybuilding amounts of creatine, is about 30. L-carnitine, about 80, and the ionic trace mineral complex. I put 30 on here because I'm trying to be honest and not make this number ridiculous. And there are different trace mineral powders out there, but really, if you're talking about the trace mineral liquid stuff out there, that should probably be $100 to $200
the liquid
for that.
Equivalent is much more.
And that's because it's just water. It's just marked up. So we're trying not to do that. But even with not doing that, we're still at a retail equivalent of about $723, $750 worth of stuff. Now, what do I sell this for? What do I sell the Master Metabolic for? $195 $150 for 30-day supply. And that's because we have it made, and we have it made in volume, and I don't have to pay salesmen, I don't have to pay marketers,
Right.
I don't have to pay anybody else. What I'm doing is I'm literally taking it from the container, that's a large container, and I'm transferring it into smaller bags for you, and
Right.
then it goes out the door. That's it.
Right.
And that is how we figured out how to get roughly $700 to $1,000 in therapeutic retail nutrition into something that the average person could actually afford to have on a regular basis.
Right, $5 a day. And I know some of you out there are buying a Starbucks. You know, if you're smoking, forget it. $5 a day to do all of those processes, to have energy. You know, your ATP levels are high. You know, to be able to digest food and not have a bloated belly, you know, after each meal and be miserable. $5 a day is not bad.
No, it's not.
Not bad.
No, it's not. And especially anybody out there that's doing fasting, you can absolutely take this and it will increase all of your fasting. It won't break your fast. It's great for keto. It's great for any diet that's out there. You'll detox on it because you'll get your metabolism up. Like, it's not a detox. You know, it's as perfect as I can make it, and when I make it better, we'll make another video. Now, that being said, if this is the only thing that you take, you're light years ahead of everybody. The My Complete Health Protocol, we would add iodine and fish oil, and depending on what, in my opinion, everybody now should be on a glutathione supplement of some kind. Because of COVID or the vaccines and all that stuff. If you don't understand that statement, then you need to watch our previous video on glutathione, the lungs, and COVID, and then that will become very apparent. And that's why. But again, though, it's like you add all of those onto that. Then if it's retail, you're looking at 1,000 to 1,500. So
Yeah.
this is why like we're trying to make it accessible.
Yeah.
And this is the bottom line. So, if you're local, and you want to stop by our clinic, then you can hit up our website and you can find our address on there. You can call in. I would advise calling or texting in because we're making so much of it currently. Now we are expanding capacity to be able to make more of it and to get more of it packaged and out the door. But currently, demand is increasing, so we have to keep up with that. But call ahead so that we can make sure that we have it. If you're online, you can go to our website and you can hit up our online store, and it is on there. And then if you're wondering what to take, how much to take, or you just have questions, then you can always schedule a consultation with me at My Complete Health. If you're local and you do want to schedule with Dr. Miller, who will get your bones and everything else all straightened out.
That's right.
Now, just for the people so that they understand, what you don't do just chiropractic.
No, so there's a big range in what chiropractic is. You know, and some people's experience is, you know, you slap down $50 at the joint and you walk in and they, you know, make some cracks in your body and then you walk out.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in a way that is chiropractic, that's using chiropractic techniques. But to be a chiropractic physician, you have to look at a person's entire body, right? And then you got to add in their chemical or their nutritional aspects. And then you have to add in their emotional aspects and see that person as a whole person, not just where you can get their body to make a crack sound.
Right.
And that's what we do.
And that's why you should schedule with Ricky. And that's why I send everybody over to him, because he actually gets the job done. And you know, if he says that he found something then I know that I'll respect that and I'll look for it. And if I say I found something, because I'll routinely write his name down and I'll say this person needs stomach adjustment,
Yes.
like this, like we've got valves the issue, we've got my scans are showing occipital bones are out of whack, that's probably going to be causing migraines and other problems, on and on and on. This is why we work together, is because we we know that, like, I don't want to crack backs. Dr. Miller doesn't want to do chemistry,
Right.
so
Exactly
it works.
Yeah.
So again, anybody has questions or comments and everything, you can always comment on the video. Make sure that you hit up our Telegram. Our Telegram is My Complete Health ND with spaces. ND as in Nancy David, natural doctor. And you can see all of our posts and everything on there. And then you can also search for us on BitChute. If you're finding this from a link, hopefully the link is from BitChute, but if not, we're on BitChute. So that's all I got right now. Good to go. All right.
Yes.
Until next time, everybody, have a good night, and we will see you later.